Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion podcast, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each episode spotlights and interviews one transformational leader, their stories, and their advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. If you are a visionary seeking to uplevel your leadership skills, then this is the podcast for you. I invite you today to spread inspiration like a contagion. Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion movement. Welcome to episode 34 of the Inspiration Contagion podcast. Today's episode is also being recorded on video, so if you would prefer to watch this episode, check out the show notes for that link. Today's guest is Kaayla T. Daniel. Kaayla, PhD, is known as the Naughty Nutritionist because she tells the truth that's too hot to handle. She is the author of the Whole Soy Story, The Dark Side of America's Favorite Health Food, Hook, Line, and Stinker, The Truth About Fermented Cod Liver Oil, and co-author of the best-selling book Nourishing Broth, an old-fashioned remedy for the modern world. She has been a guest on the Dr. Oz Show, PBS Healing Quest, NPR's People's Pharmacy, ABC's View from the Bay, and the Discovery Channel's Medical Hotseat, among other shows. And she has spoken at Ancestral Health, Paleo FX, BoulderFest, Nutritional Therapy Association, NTA, and other leading conferences, summits, and podcasts. You can visit drkayladaniel.com to learn more about Dr. Kaayla's upcoming program, Dirty Little Secrets of the Detox Industry. Discover shocking truths about the detoxification fad. Learn what can help, what can harm, and find out how you can get the healthy results that you desire. With that, welcome, Kaayla.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on your show.
It's an honor to have you here, and I love the names of your books. They are just super clever and catchy, and I love your title. It's super fun.
Thank you.
With that, I'd love if you wanted to start by just telling us a little bit more about your background and who you are.
Well, like many of us, I was one of the sick and tired people and sick and tired of being sick and tired, and thought I did not want to go on meds. I wanted to find an alternative natural approach, something that seemed like common sense, actually. And that's how my exploration of health and healing began. So that was some time ago. And I tried just about everything. I did Ayurveda, I did macrobiotics, I did juice fasting, I did raw foods. I mean, you name it, I did it. And ultimately found my way to a high-fat primal type of diet that that respects animals and the environment, and it seems to be an ancestral diet that most of us have evolved to be on. So in the process of that, I just came to realize that there was a whole lot of black and white thinking in the natural foods community, that there were all these little wars going on, and part of what I wanted to do is bring people together because we do have so much in common. And I also saw that many people were overwhelmed with all the inconsistent and contradictory choices and evidence and points of view. And I decided the best way to handle that was to have some fun with it. So that's pretty much how Naughty Nutritionist got going. Not naughty so much in this sense of sex, but naughty as mischief. And if we can have fun, if we can put the education and the entertainment together, people can learn better and just feel less stressed from it.
Yeah, well, and anytime you look at nutrition or diets or all these things, my immediate reaction, and I think most people's immediate reaction is like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, it's so restrictive. It's not fun. So I like that you're making it fun, but also that there's a lot of information and data behind what you're recommending to your clients. So it's kind of a perfect balance.
Yeah, we have to have the hard science. We have to have the studies, the clinical case studies, of course, and we do need to have respect for the anecdotes because that's where a lot of the investigation begins, the stories we're hearing from people.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The stories are there's so much information there, and it's really fascinating when you go to a traditional medical doctor. It's so rushed in that appointment, and so you don't really get to the root cause of the problem because they're not able to hear that full story. So I imagine when you're working with your clients, you're listening to those stories really carefully, kind of with your science hat on, to uncover what's the actual problem at the core to then suggest some nutrition changes.
Yes, and I find people very much need to be heard. And if doctors are spending 10, 15 minutes, I mean, that's where things are just maybe getting started, where people are just beginning to trust you and to open up. And sometimes people need quite a while before it starts to come out. And often the little details that wouldn't seem significant are the ones that actually are going to tell us the way to go. So I believe in giving people a lot of time.
Yeah, I think that especially for really tricky cases medically and with our health, it's kind of like you need a detective and a holistic detective at that to really uncover all of the little details that could lead to the biggest clue around what's actually going on. It's really fascinating. I've had conversations with people in different sectors of health, and there's such tiny little things that you could say and that you would not typically share with your doctor that trigger and prompt that, oh, well, this is something that might be going on with you.
And often the language people use, they're not aware of it, but it's a big clue too. I mean, somebody with constipation is constantly saying something like, and this is impacting me at work, and this is impacting me, and they've got a terrible constipation problem. And those things actually, they do go together.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how much our health affects everything else in our life. So I'm super glad that we have people like you that are making this fun and a safe space where your clients can feel safe and share their story. So with that, I also wanted to ask you, what makes you such an inspirational leader, or what's your secret sauce?
Well, thank you for calling me an inspirational leader, first of all.
You're welcome.
Um, If I have a secret sauce, it might be that naughtiness, because I make it fun, and it's something I offer, and it's innate to me. If I'm teaching a Kundalini yoga class, there's a little naughtiness in it. That's my slant on it. So that's where my personality comes into it. And there are plenty of people out there who try to be funny or even naughty, but we need the science to go with it, and I think I bring the two together. So that would be part of it. And otherwise, I would just say years and years of being part of the whole food, slow food movement, real food, organic. I've been a part of that from way back, grass-fed, pastured. So I've been involved with many of the people there, and I wouldn't say I'm the leader. I'm one of many people on that team trying to support organic farmers and ranchers.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that naughtiness personality factor of making things fun is so essential today. I mean, it's already daunting when you have a health challenge or something's not quite right with your health. And to make these changes, we take for granted sometimes how difficult that change can be. And it varies with each person. So is there an example of how you make that fun for a client?
Well, if you try too hard to be funny, it often doesn't work. You know, it's like going on a date and the guy says, so you got a sense of humor, tell me a joke. Doesn't quite work. But depending, every client's a little different, and with some, humor might be inappropriate early on, but at some point maybe it can be introduced, and if you can get them laughing at themselves, and where we're laughing together, and I certainly laugh at myself, and I'll be the first to point out some of the ill-conceived ideas I had back in the day. And just in general, we know laughter is good medicine. I mean, Norman Cousins proved that years ago, and nobody's doubting that. And we even have laughter yoga. So sometimes the prescription for somebody will be, I want you to laugh for 5 minutes today, and maybe we're going to have to do it together. And it starts off in a very artificial way, but then it starts to become contagious.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I remember, speaking of laughter yoga, I haven't done that, but I went to this breathwork event at Wanderlust years ago, and so you're doing this really deep, intense breathing, and then you're starting to laugh. And at first, it's very artificial and very awkward, right? And then as you hear the 50 other people in the room laughing, you're just like, I can't believe we're doing this. This is hysterical. And you're genuinely laughing at that point. So it is quite contagious.
It is, and you feel the healing, I think. If you laugh long enough, it sort of opens everything up.
Yeah, no, laughter is absolutely some of the best medicine out there. So find your favorite comedy or, just start artificially laughing with a friend. And like we just shared, it is contagious. It will eventually feel quite natural. I love that. So what does inspiration mean to you?
Well, let's think of the word inspire. It's about breath. So let's think about breathing deeply. And the more deeply we're able to breathe, that the more it opens us up to spirit, which actually is inspire, in spirit. And that's where our creativity comes from. And when we're in that authentic breathing self, well, the authentic people are more inspiring to people in general, I would say.
I completely agree. And these days with social media and, right now social distancing, it is more important than ever to be authentic. And ironically, I like to share that, right now we're wearing masks, but make sure you're not wearing an artificial mask, right? So take those layers off and try to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah, and even more important right now when people are not able to breathe when they're out in public because of the masks, is that we breathe and do breathing exercises when we're private, when we're outdoors. And some of us are in states where we're not even supposed to be unmasked outdoors, but I would certainly recommend, get out in a private space and breathe, breathe, breathe.
Yes, yes. Breath has never been more important with the elevated anxiety, the fears that are going all around. I notice that when I'm stressing, my shoulders start coming up, and if I check in with myself, I'm breathing from just the neck up. It's very, very surface breath work. And so I try to check in throughout the day and remind myself, I'm like, just sigh it out as a reminder that, breathing shifts everything. And in fact, the studies and research shows that when we deepen our inhale and lengthen our exhale so that it's longer than the inhale, it actually tricks our brain into believing that we are safe and comfortable and not anxious, even if you're feeling panicked. So it's a really great way to shift from that fear-based or anxiety-based thinking into a calm state.
It absolutely is. And when we're not that constricted anymore and the panic dissipates, then we're able to deal with whatever is in front of us.
Yeah, and that's like you just said, that's how you get inspired is through breathing so that you're not in a state of fear and panic, and then you have more possibility and more options. I love that. That's a beautiful definition. So, with that, I also wanted to ask you, how do you define success for yourself, and how did you arrive at this definition?
Well, for years, of course, I was chasing celebrity and success in all the usual exterior forms. But as I've gotten older, it becomes more about being successful according to what's in integrity for yourself. It's in terms of, well, how did you do with your children, your friends, your community, whether you've inspired and helped your clients. And that may or may not be something that's, very public. In many cases, it's quite private. It's just between you and yourself and, well, me, myself, and I, in most cases, the three of us. And your relationship with people that you're working closely with. Being successful in those relationships is so important.
Yeah, and that also sounds like a really good definition of happiness, which is very specific to each person and quite unique and private. And most people I've interviewed on the show, when I ask them this question around success, it's interesting. It evolves over time. So at first it's those external factors, and then as you really come to deeply know yourself and the roadmap that you're on and how you're serving clients, etc., it shifts into this place of impact and inspiring others and being connected and being authentic and in integrity. So I think that's a really beautiful definition.
And you mentioned happiness, and there's been so much research lately on happiness, and then Gretchen Rubin's books and other popular books on happiness, and finding out that we can influence our own happiness. We have a whole lot of control over that. And also just that it's not just being able to be on vacation and doing what you want, it's doing fulfilling work with some passion and purpose.
Yeah, I love Gretchen Rubin's book and her podcast. She's amazing. And it really is those simple things. So it's interesting. A lot of people right now with shelter in place, they're saying all the small things that they miss, going to the coffee shop, things of that nature, having hugs. And the thing is that we can try to dwell on all the things we can't do right now, or we could shift that into the small things that we can still do and being grateful. And I find that the key to happiness in many ways is always shifting back to gratitude and what I do have and what I am grateful for versus looking at all the things that I don't have.
Yeah, what we focus on multiplies.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're listening and you're feeling, down or frustrated, I challenge you to write down 3 things that you're grateful for and try to focus on that for the day.
And they can be tiny, tiny things. It's just the shift.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And with that, since we're talking about, it could be difficult right now, what are some challenges or obstacles that you faced along your journey to success?
I've been a whistleblower, and that can make life difficult because you'll be in a tribe and then you discover that there's some things that aren't right. A leader who perhaps has abused her power, and putting many of the followers, say, in jeopardy, say with a product that is rancid and has caused great illness, etc. So I have uh, built a lot of my so-called career and success on some exposés. And the first big one, of course, was the Whole Soy Story, the dark side of America's favorite health foods. And that was, as you might guess, not liked by the soy industry and many other people. And then more recently, the hook, line, and stinker, the truth about fermented cod liver oil, and that was about a specific product recommended by the Weston Price Foundation. And I'd been very involved with them. And when I felt compelled to research a product that was harming many, many people, that was very challenging. And I had to break with my tribe. And so that was very painful, very heartbreaking in many ways, but I felt it was something that needed to be done. So some people thought my agent, for example, let me go at that point because he said, I couldn't sell books as a martyr, and lost some friends. But you have to do what you have to do.
Mm.
So that's been my challenges. That what's been my greatest successes have also, there's been a lot of pain along the way.
Yeah, I find that a lot of times some of our biggest successes are often tied to duality, where there's a lot of challenge leading up to those. But what are some pointers for people that might be in a similar situation, on how to navigate that well? Obviously it's going to be painful and there's that grieving process, but what was most helpful for you because you've been through this more than once?
I think whether we're thinking of ourselves as, say, regular people, or whether as health experts, we have to take care to not put other people up on a pedestal, beware of the guru.
Yeah.
Sadly, too many times the guru has been shown to be flawed, whether we're talking about behavioral issues, Me Too issues or whatever, or whether we're talking about just plain making mistakes in the alternative health field. Because we learn and grow, we make mistakes, and we move on. And I think it's very important for all of us who are leading in this area to stay up with what's going on, and if we've made a mistake, to be upfront about it.
Yeah, and I think that applies to any industry and any part of life, whether you're in business, marketing, design work, any industry. You really need to stay current. And like you said, if something's out of alignment or you've been supporting a product or a service that you no longer can believe in and put your word and your reputation behind, be honest about that, be authentic about that. And it is painful, but it's also the right thing to do at the end of the day. I also find that when we go through these pivots or shifts of discovery, you learn more about yourself, and ultimately you learn about the people that you need to shed from your life so that you can make space for new people that will help you grow even more.
Yeah, well said, well said.
It's a
And I
painful
think
process, though.
it's painful, and I think we all need to use common sense, and we also need to trust our gut, because I think most of us at one point or another, our gut was telling us one thing, but the mind told us another. We went the way of the mind, and then we deeply regretted it later. So pay attention to that gut, listen to that intuition, leave space to listen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely listen to your gut. One question I have for you on that is, so sometimes that gut feeling can also just be that we are a little scared to make a big change, even though we feel really excited about it. So how do you discern the difference between hesitation and a gut feeling?
That's a good point, because hesitation, it can be fear, it can be, maybe it's not the right choice. I think that's where we have to practice. The more we tune in, the more we're able to notice the difference between, say, being genuinely excited about something and just having, shiny bright object syndrome, where, attention deficit, you're here, you're another thing. It's tricky, and I think it's going to feel a little different for everybody. But the more we tune into our gut every day on a whole lot of little things, the more we're going to be able to accurately read ourselves on the big ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So it takes a lot of practice to get to know your intuition. So I also wanted to ask you, is there a story of inspiration that you're known for or one that you'd like to share?
Well, people like it when I talk about how I used to be skinny and a bitch before the skinny bitches were ever born.
You are funny.
And that was when I was too thin. I was young, really thin, and very frazzled. I had poor focus, a lot of health issues, energy issues, and now I like to say, I never again want to be skinny, and I don't think I ever actually wanted to be a bitch.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. So what changed for you, and how were you able to get past that? Because I know a lot of people struggle with looking at things on social media or on television and this crazy expectation in society of women to be super thin. How were you able to shift from that to a healthier place?
Yeah, that's the media image of the ideal woman is a real burden for all of us. And besides the, you can never be too rich or too thin idea, which has been on for a long, long time, There's the whole ageism thing. And when I was 30, I was never thinking about that at all. And as I've gotten older, and now I'm 70, and I'm not even allowed to adopt a cat because I might not live long enough. Uh,
Whoa, that's
yeah.
crazy. Wow.
So we're confronting that all the time. And most of my clients are women. And at this point, most of them are postmenopausal women. And some of what we've all been dealing with is those expectations, and not being so thin anymore, not being wrinkle-free anymore, perhaps never having been beautiful and missed that whole thing altogether.
Wow. Yeah, that's hard. So how do you help your clients deal with that?
Well, sometimes I'll have them read certain things. Certain times I'll have them do certain fun things. I'll explore with them what they enjoy doing. Like, somebody that I was working with was saying that she was really upset with the news and not being able to help with all these things. And I gently, as I could, pointed out that, in fact, she could be helping. You know, if she loved the outdoors, she could be joining those groups that pick up trash, for example, and then she'd have a community that she was out with, or a community garden, and, you know, growing things together, soup kitchens. That if, you know, sitting around your house being upset by the news is not helping anyone, least of all yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Helping them discover who they are and how they can take action versus victimizing or feeling that, pity party, so that they can get out of fear and into action and empowerment. And I also think, going back to the beauty thing, that it's about redefining beauty for ourselves and not letting society's impression of that impact how we define that.
Yeah, and I think we still can totally enjoy fashion and art and so forth. And for people who do enjoy fashion and feel that fashion's for young people, I always point out Iris Apfel, and, you know, she's about 100 years old, and she wears the most amazing, bizarre outfits, and she's 100% a character, and very elegant in her own unique way. And she has not let age bother her fashion sense one bit.
Yeah, I hope for people listening that you don't let your age impact you, because it really is your perspective that matters the most when it comes to that number. It's just a number, and you can feel as old or as young as you allow your experience to show you.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you identified as a movement leader when we did our first call, and so I would like to ask you to tell us about a movement that you've built.
Well, it's that very large sustainable agriculture movement, and that would include organic vegetables, pastured beef, grass-fed, wild, biodynamic, the full spectrum there, and supporting the farmers who are active in trying to produce that kind of highly nutritious, dynamic, energized, vital food for us. And that is a multi-pronged thing, because it's not only what's providing us the food that we need to stay physically and mentally healthy, but it's good for the community. Like, if you're buying your food at the farmer's market, you're getting to know your farmers. There's somebody you're saying hello to. And likewise, if I go to the co-op where I live, the same people are checking me out. I've got a community. Maybe they're not my friends, but at least I know that's Bill and that's, Jenny. And that helps with the community. And I think it helps with people's issues having to do with, say, feeling alone and isolated. Of course, that's a little harder now where everybody's kind of masked over,
Yeah.
but in many cases, we still see the same people. And
Yeah.
I think it helps.
Yeah, no, I like that you're looking at the sustainable movement in a holistic way. So yes, it's about the farmers. Yes, it's about nutritional food. It's about educating people on that, providing access to that. But I also agree, a lot of that is also about community, and it's about supporting small businesses, which is vital to the economy.
Exactly. Small businesses, small farmers, and it's good for the environment. And I support and have been deeply involved with some of the organizations who are protecting our farmers. For years, I was with the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, for example, and supported groups like Cornucopia and, well, many others, Savory Institute. There's many, many good groups out there helping our farmers, the environment, our communities.
Yeah, and I like that you're sharing that list of organizations so that people that feel like sustainable foods as a movement is too big for them and, how would I even begin to help? There are organizations that you can support with your funds or by sharing information. And it's really that simple. It's small steps.
Yeah, the very first thing is voting with your dollars. Yes, it does cost me more to shop at the co-op, but for me, it's worth it. I'm walking my talk. And maybe that's going to mean I buy fewer cherries in cherry season because they cost more per pound. But, I'm authentic, with my values.
Well, and also you're able to know and trust that the food that you're getting is nutritionally higher in content and also not exposing you to things that could be causing health problems down the road.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. So, what are some of the pillars of success for building a movement that catches fire?
I think working with other people and not feeling the need to have all the credit. Like, I think Margaret Mead said something about you could change the world if you let other people take all the credit for it. Something along those lines. That people don't really want to work with the glory hogs. But if people are teaming up together, you've got a community, you've got a lot of people chipping in. I think that builds a movement.
Yeah. And how have you done that specifically around your movement?
Uh, Well, when I was with the Hunt Gather Grow Foundation, we had formed that with the idea of it being bottoms up governance with everybody's opinions, mattering, that we were listening. And we were truly listening. We had a town hall meeting where people all contributed to what they cared about, where we were making lists of everybody's idea. The brainstorming was going on like crazy. And of course, you can't do everything. But we discovered that even though a lot of people's ideas ended up not happening, that people were just so glad that they were heard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, those ideas lay the foundation and groundwork for ultimately the best ideas. That's going to be that 20% most effective thing with the largest impact that the organization or movement should be running after. And you can't do that unless you're really listening and creating a space where people feel comfortable to share all of their ideas.
Yeah, the brainstorming's amazing. I mean, whether yourself or with your team or with your many people in a movement, that there are all sorts of totally crazy nutso ideas will come up, but as part of the free flowing ones, some magic will happen too.
Yeah, and you have to have those crazy ideas to eventually land on the smart and crazy ideas.
Exactly. Smart and crazy is what I love.
Right? That's the secret sauce, I think. Great. So when you're doing this, you're building that movement, you have that group of people, the pillars of success, and including people brainstorming. How are you gaining trust, support, and buy-in for your movements?
Sometimes it's just listening. That if people feel heard, that's it right there. It's one of the trickiest things when you start out, say, being a nutritionist. Like years ago, I felt I had to be talking. It was all, I thought what they wanted was all my research, all my education, everything I knew, and that I had to prove myself. And it was like a data dump. And at this point, I've come to realize that's not really what people want in most cases. If they want that, it's in the books, it's in the studies, and sure, it's my job to provide that. But when we're working together, or even say if I'm giving a talk to a group, a whole lot of listening and intuiting what they want to hear that day.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's interesting, and listening doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
So even if you're just getting started, the best thing you can do whether it's research around the market that you're going into, whether it's, working with that first new client or doing a beta launch of a product or a service, or even just talking to a family member or someone in your community that needs support, we are all craving to be heard and to feel safe and understood. And so listening is a great way to build that trust and support.
Yeah, with clients, what I find is if I let them talk and really listen, and sometimes it's just, could you tell me a little more about that or whatever, because my intuition is that there's something there. And when they discover it on their own, it's so much more powerful. And it doesn't have all the charge of, me being the boss and saying, you got to do this. If they're realizing themselves in the depths of their being, they are so much more likely to find a solution and work with that.
Yeah, and I mean, these days I feel like people have kind of lost the skill of listening. And so when we are actively listening and asking someone to expand more because we're intuiting or just aware that something else is there that they haven't shared, it allows that person the ability to begin to think and process around something that they probably haven't considered because nobody's really heard them out. Yeah. Okay. And I was hoping also you could share perhaps a story of inspiration tied to your movement.
Let me tell you a little bit about somebody who started having bone broth in her diet. So, of course, bone broth, it's part of the whole foods movement, real food, slow food, ancestral food, honoring all parts of the animal. So you're making bone broth with the carcass, you're eating the liver and organ meats as well as the muscle meats. You're honoring all parts of the animal. So for years, when people were starting to have, say, paleo diets, the focus was more on the muscle meats, and nobody was talking about bone broth initially or talking much about it. And this was something that back in 2003, I did an article that was then picked up by a whole bunch of bloggers, and they did their own variations on it. And it was, why broth is beautiful, why it's healing. So I have several stories of people who had advanced arthritis, where they could barely walk around or do anything. And their lives were horribly impacted by that. And they'd done everything that the medical professionals recommended to no avail. And they decided to do a whole foods diet and to include bone broth. And it started with them just saying, I don't believe this is going to help, my knees or anything. But hey, this is what my grandmother fed me. And this client in particular was saying it helped her feel in touch with the grandmother that she had loved so much. It was bringing back those memories, and she was sharing with her family. And so it started with just the warmth of spending more time around the table with people she loved, which right there has some healing benefit. And bit by bit, she was doing more and more of the bone broth. And she started first she started noticing the nails were better, the skin was better, and she was liking that. Still not believing that it was going to affect the knees and the arthritis. But bit by bit, those hands started to become more normal again. She started to heal. She started to be able to walk without pain. And we have so many stories like that. And that just inspires me.
Yeah, it's incredible that you could shift one thing like that in your diet to have such a profound impact. And I think we get overwhelmed when we're changing our diets, especially if they're really restrictive. But just like you said, that's incredible. And it goes back to caveman times, I imagine we were using all of the animal, and we've lost so much of that by centralizing and processing our food. So it makes a lot of sense to me. And I love the part about how it was bringing her back those experiences with her grandmother. I think food is so healing when we actually have experiences where we connect with people around the table. And I know we can't do that as much right now, but for people that are at home with your family, it really is about having that really special experience, unplugged from technology and sharing food over the table.
Well, there's wonderful stories about the old-fashioned cookbooks from the mid-19th century through mid-20th century. Most of the cookbooks had a whole chapter on what they called convalescent cookery, and because they understood that most of us at some point in our lives are going to be taking care of a friend, a family member, a child, or maybe an aging parent. And in those chapters, they talked a lot about foods that were easy on the digestion, and they recommended bone broth. And then we had Florence Nightingale and the very inspiring story of how she somehow convinced the most famous chef in London to go to the Crimean War with her to cook up bone broth for the soldiers. So she was one inspiring person. I mean, what she did with public health, with statistics, with nursing, and well, I love her bone broth story. I mean, she was providing those soldiers with the healing broth.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of an act of love too, because those soldiers probably hadn't had like a home cooked anything for a long time. So they're probably like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So it has healing qualities from the nutrition, but also the fact that somebody was willing to go out of their way to do that for them.
And contrast that with the soldiers today. They get the meal in the little, Ziploc package.
Oh, let's not even get started there. My brother was a Marine, and so he's a veteran, and I will never forget that he would write us asking for socks and antibacterial soap, and just like really simple things, and food. I mean, just being hungry and being on the front lines, it's crazy to me that we're not supporting the soldiers that are volunteering to keep us safe with better nutrition, among other things. It's crazy. All right. Well, this has been really a really great conversation, really inspiring, lots of great stories, lots of fun. We're going to dive into our lightning round questions now. All right. So what's your favorite book?
My favorite book, oh my gosh. Uh, right now I really love Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, and the sense that we are responsible for ourselves and our own destiny.
That's a good one. What networking or community group do you love most?
Right now, I'm very excited about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s group trying to expose the dangers of vaccination and work with public policy to try to prevent mandatory vaccinations, which I do believe can hurt so many people. And above and beyond that, there is the whole personal freedom issue, which is very important to me.
Yeah, very, very interesting topic. I'll have to check that out for sure. Thanks for sharing that. What's the best piece of advice you could share with others today?
Trust Mother Nature's wisdom and take care with Father Technology.
I love that. I'm going to have to like write that down and just reflect on that. If you could share one message with the world, what would that be?
I think it would be the same. Trust Mother Nature. What she designed for us is what we've still evolved to thrive on. And with all the changes in technology having to do with Wi-Fi and all of that stuff, we have not evolved for that. So we need to take great precautions, in my opinion. And we've not evolved to eat processed food and plastic foods and to deal with the chemicals in the environment. So let's trust Mother Nature's wisdom and what she gave us eons ago.
Yeah, that's good wisdom and good advice. And my last question, what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
To have contributed to sustainable agriculture and the healing of planet Earth.
Love it. Love it. So I hope that all of our listeners have enjoyed this episode. I certainly have. Dr. Kaayla is offering a free giveaway. She has an ebook called Be Super: 7 Ways to Boost Your Health and Energy with Broth. So I will have that link so you can check that out in the show notes. Also, I will have a link to her website, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you so much, Kaayla. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, thank you. It's been great.
Yeah, this has been great. All right,
Very inspiring.
oh, great. That's the goal. I'm so glad to hear that. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. What is one thing you can do in this moment that will inspire someone? Without action, nothing changes. Be the change you wish to see in the world. If this show truly inspired you, we ask that you share it through your network. Help us spread the light and inspiration in the world. I look forward to seeing you here next week.